Hi, my name is Beth Duda, and I'm the director of the Suncoast Campaign for grade level reading. Welcome to our parent chat, How to Help Children Deal with COVID-19. This webinar is brought to you through a partnership between the Florida Center for Early Childhood and the Suncoast Campaign for grade level reading. Our guests this afternoon are Tamra Cajo, director of the Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorders Clinic for the Florida Center for Early Childhood, and Marina Bunch, Clinical Director of Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Services for the Florida Center for Early Childhood. Tamra and Marina, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The coronavirus has temporarily changed life for many of us. Parents and caregivers have been thrust into new situations, leading to many questions on how best to support the children in their lives through this crisis. I thank you both for being willing to share your expertise and your wisdom with us. Tamra, let's begin with you. With the recent safer at home order that Governor DeSantis has put into place, many parents and caregivers will be spending the next 30 days in pretty close quarters with their children. Children are going to be distance learning, and many adults are working from home. What advice do you have on how to structure or organize days to reduce stress and wear and tear on the family?
Such a hard question to answer. You know, before I would even get to answering the question, one thing that we talk about in the clinical world is being good enough. And so in regular life, you know, that's what we always strive for because perfection is just not possible. But even more so right now, looking at being good enough. And so when I talk about good enough, that means you're a good enough mother, you're a good enough father, you're a good enough worker, you're a good enough learner. We can't strive for perfection because there's so many new things that are being like our brain is just going crazy right now of all these new things that are going on. So I'd say that really going back to that good enough routine, that, you know, I've talked to some parents who are like, I didn't get all these things, I'm not productive enough. Well, that might be too much. So really, what are your priorities? And so let's just say if a parent is working, really having chunking out parts of the day that you're working. But if you're working, then you have to figure out, okay, what are my kids doing at the same time? And so letting them know. So maybe that's the time you're working when they don't need as much assistance. Or, you know, so you're kind of looking at that. There's just another intentionality that needs to happen. And just pick the couple things that are really important. So if let's just say exercise is important, just pick an hour a day, and you tell them exactly what you want and have them do it. There might be some downtime. And the other thing is with the routine is it's important to have time for connection right now because the anxiety level is so high and we need each other. So sometimes I think there's been caregivers that have been really stressed about the homework, and really what the kids are needing is that connection. So if it's disrupting your connection, it's okay that they're not learning to the same capacity right now and to really get into that connection piece.
Yeah, it's been so fascinating to see how teachers and parents and caregivers are adjusting quickly to this new reality. I saw on social media where some math teachers were teaching measurements through cookie recipes, and that some concepts were being taught using Lego blocks, and really making the experience interactive so that the families have that time to bond and be with each other rather than having to reach some unreachable standard of perfection during this time.
Exactly.
I've also heard that some families are putting together a schedule as a family looking at when
Mhm.
distance learning is happening and what the needs are. I was in a conversation a little earlier today with a mother who has 3 children who are school age, who are distance
Mhm.
learning. She and her husband both are working at home, and they have a 3-year-old. So
Mhm.
the schedule that they've put together has an awful lot to do with who is taking care of the 3-year-old at any given moment. But
Yes.
they've all been able to work it out so that they all had input into what the schedule looks like.
Exactly. Everyone needs to have a voice, and creativity is there. And so if you stick with the routine as it is, it may not work in this world that we're living in right now. So having everyone communicate and use their different skill sets and their different ideas may make the routine something completely different than they ever thought it would be.
Hmm. Absolutely. Okay. So Marina, I'd like to ask you, there's a range of different reactions people are having, and things are changing on a daily basis. How can parents respond to a child or a teenager who is highly anxious about all of this, especially if the parent also is experiencing anxiety?
Absolutely. I mean, we are all in this kind of uncertainty together right now, and as you said, Beth, things are changing day day by day, and we don't have all of the answers. The important thing is that we're able to be honest with our children, but honest at their developmental level. So we have to think about how old they are, what kind of information can they handle, and we want to explain it to them and at their developmental level, um, and also in a way that's going to ease their anxiety and not increase their anxiety. If we don't know the answers to questions, it's okay for us to also say, we don't know, but what we do know is that, every effort is being made and everything that's happening is to keep people safe. And it's okay for us not to have all of the answers all the time, because sometimes as parents, we just don't know. Um, and then, of course, parents are also experiencing their own anxiety right now. Lots of uncertainty, and we just heard Tamra talk about what parents are having to do in terms of their schedules and get creative and juggle and balance so many things. And so it is really important for parents to be able to monitor their own anxiety. Perhaps that means limiting some exposure to the news, finding some structure, self-care, and really kind of thinking about the tone that they display around the kids when they're talking about what's going on, and their level of arousal. That's really important.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say limit your news time. I often have to remind myself that the 24/7 news cycle is not because we need news 24/7.
Mhm.
It's there so we have access to it when the time is right for us. Um, so I love that suggestion of perhaps checking in only once or twice a day and hearing the news and hearing the things that you need to, but not to have that consistent crisis playing in your household.
Absolutely. And understanding what kinds of things cause you anxiety. So if the news, and I think most people would agree that right now, at least, the news probably increases anxiety. So it does for me. So having boundaries around that, like you said, Beth, is really important, and also to protect our kids, because we want to be able to filter the information that we give them, and like I said, explain it to them at a developmental level. So the news isn't going to be developmentally appropriate for a lot of kids.
Sometimes I'm not sure it's developmentally appropriate for me. So it's great advice. So, Tamra, with many children and adults missing so many social activities and events, what's the best response parents can use if their child is asking when this virus will end and when will life go back to normal?
Well, I think what Marina was mentioning is that we just need to be honest. And so for the things that we don't know, we don't know. And, just letting them know that the scientists are working. to help us and to help us be able to come to go back out again and to help those people that are sick, and that we have our role. But at the same time, I think really oftentimes what kids are saying is like they're needing connection. And how do we, it's been amazing actually in these past couple of weeks of how you can connect in a remote, virtual way. There's art classes, you could do remote field trips, you could do, I mean, the list can go on and on. You can have play dates. And so I think the parents can also talk to the kids about like, well, who do you miss? Should we give them a call? Like, how do you help keep those connections going? And you can even do this for the young ones. We're having at our school like social skills groups for a 3-year-old. They're so excited to see their friends. It doesn't have to be so long, but it's connection. And there's so many creative ways to do it. And there's games online. There's so many different ways. And so that's really ultimately what they're wanting, is just to be having those relationships still.
I've been tickled in my neighborhood that we have stuffed animals in the windows so that when
Yeah.
children are taking a walk, they're going on a bear hunt. And a friend of mine today told me that her neighborhood has started coloring pictures of Easter eggs and putting them in the windows so that children can go on an Easter egg hunt when they're walking in the neighborhood. And
Yeah.
I think all of those things are helpful to make us feel like we're part of something larger than ourselves.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, there's so many great ideas out there.
So, Marina, many people are watching the news. We're hearing about mortality rates daily. And what advice do you have for parents about exposing their children to those statistics?
Yeah, again, we really, the news again can cause a lot of fear for us as adults. So just imagine then for children to watch these things and hear about people dying and not fully comprehending it. That's really, really scary for kids because they may not be able to process it in the same way that we do. We can't filter all of this information from our kids. I think one really important thing to remember, things are very negative. We hear a lot of negative things about this virus, but it's important to put it in perspective as well, for children and really for all of us as adults. What we know right now in terms of the numbers is that 80% of people who contract this virus only show signs of mild illness. And that's certainly not to dismiss, of course, that 20%, that this virus is impacting, has impacted, and the deaths, that have happened as a result. But it is important to put it in perspective while still validating the loss and while still validating and acknowledging the fear that, this has been dangerous for some people and that it is scary.
Yes, and I think to highlight that we're all doing this social distancing and this staying at home, all of us who are not essential workers, in order to lower those numbers and in order to make sure that not as many people are going to get sick and are going to be suffering, so that this inconvenience we're going through is actually helping people to stay well. I think that's a more positive way of presenting it.
It sure is. That's such an important message. I think the message of these things are being done to keep people safe and to keep people healthy, and so our lives can return back to normal soon. Yeah, that message of safety, I think, is really essential.
Yes. Um, so I would like to encourage anyone who's in on the webinar to use the chat box. If you have questions that you would like to see Tamra and Marina answer, if you type them into the chat box, we will do our very best to make sure we answer all of your questions. Tamra, are there any special ways parents of children with special needs should be responding differently to their children at this time?
Well, special needs definitely have their special challenges. And there's a lot of, I think of in the job I do, we're having children that have dealt with serious trauma, have attention issues, have been exposed to substances, have problems with understanding social language. There's all these things that they're really struggling with. So it's important in, first of all, understanding what your child's disability is. And so even going back to the first part of a child that's been traumatized, you know, which we had already talked about, okay, what if I'm anxious and how do I respond to that child? But really, we want to make sure to kind of check to see where that child, their trauma history is and how it's impacting the household, and really getting that message of felt safety in the house, where even though they might be scared out there, the parents are there to take care of them and there's that safety. So that's the foundation in terms of helping all these kids that are struggling. But at the same time, we want to look at, really what is their challenges. So are they having challenges with attention? Are they having challenges understanding the information? So there's a lot of kids that we work with that are really concrete thinkers. They don't understand abstract things. And right now, this is kind of abstract and confusing. And so there was one child that I've been working with, he didn't understand like what is social distancing. And so the mother was trying to explain social distancing in the store and he got mad and he didn't understand. So really kind of explaining what does that mean? And you explain so there might be a child that's 10 years old, but you might be reading a book for a child that's 5 years old because really where they are developmentally is much younger. You might really need to be looking at going back to that exercise piece where how do you get creative? They might need that movement. So if they're having problems with attention and things like that, we need to figure out throughout the day that they're moving around, or else these behaviors are going to start kind of escalating. So it's kind of like you want to kind of create accommodations for the house for understanding their disability, but also it's just you need to reframe this. So it's possible that some of these behaviors are escalating, but you have to just be kind to yourself and kind to that child, that this is just a whole different environment that we're living in right now, and go back to what does this child need in this moment.
I think that's a really good point, that some behaviors that parents or caregivers might have felt that they'd make great progress with, they might be seeing, what they're perceiving to be a couple steps back.
Mm-hmm.
And really, if we give each other that grace of knowing that we're all trying to adjust to the new reality, and that some of the behaviors or acting out that they might see in their children might not be children being naughty as much as it is children striving to cope with this new reality in the way that they understand.
Yeah, and I think about going back to the routine question, like with kids with special needs, routine is really a big deal. And I could even say, me personally, after 3 weeks slowly starting to get into routine. So I just can't imagine them where we couldn't even have the mindset, like the mind space to figure out the routine quite yet. It's slowly getting a little bit better. And eventually we're going to get into a routine somehow because that's how we operate. So, yes, giving everyone grace that everyone was a little off for the past couple of weeks, including.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, Marina, we've heard some valuable tips so far from you and Tamra about actions that parents can take. Are there responses that parents should avoid? Some like, please don't ever say this kind of things?
Sure. Before I answer that, I just wanted to acknowledge there's a comment here that someone made with a great suggestion. Doni said that a good idea to help children feel like they can help others is to draw or write happy messages in chalk on their sidewalks for neighbors walking by their house. So that is a really great suggestion. going along with the little Easter egg hunt and things. Yes, there's
Yes.
so much we can do creatively to connect to those around us. So thank you for that. In terms of, things not to say, going back to the first question that you asked me is, how can we explain this to kids? And one of the things I said is, we need to be honest with them at their developmental level. Of course, we're not going to tell a 5-year-old some complicated explanation of this, but we need to be honest. And so I think conversely, then don't lie, don't lie to your kids, because kids, they're smart. They're really, really smart. And if we lie to them, then there's kind of holes in the story for them. And so it's important that we don't lie. It's important that we answer their questions, and that we don't ignore them, that we don't minimize how they're feeling, and that we, again, just going back to being mindful of ourselves. Of course, we as parents, we're going through all of this as well, but we have to be our child's safe base, right? We have to hold it together for them, because they look to us to get that sense of confidence and safety. So it's important that when we're relaying information, again, that we are not overreactive or overly emotional ourselves as we're talking to our children about this.
I think that's a great tip. And, when I see different age children reacting to different things, we have so many high school seniors who are, mourning their proms and wondering if they're going to be able to walk in their cap and gown. And we have, rising sixth graders who are missing the opportunity to go and visit the school that they might want to be attending. And some children that I know that are upset because they don't think they're going to have, the field day or the jogathon that they had been working on, and that all of those things have a different importance to children, but they are important. So not to minimize that.
Not to minimize it. All of those things are very important. I think that in the theme of all of that is this collective loss that children are experiencing and that we're experiencing. So there's also a lot of grieving going on for everything, that is not the way that it was, for everything that's being missed, for all the loss that our children and we're experiencing. So it really is like a grief and loss process.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, I think us being kind to each other and extending grace to each other at this time can go a long way. There have been so many helpful things that I've seen on social media over the past couple of weeks. People with tips on how to connect, connecting in new ways, virtual birthday parties, all kinds of positive things, and some teachers and principals have been posting something that, your children are going to remember the time that they spent with you during this time. They're not going to remember how many math lessons they accomplished, or even necessarily how many days they were out of school. That this is a time when we really can be making memories and solidifying some connections that we perhaps haven't felt we've had time for, because suddenly we all have a lot of time, which is can be a very positive thing.
Yeah.
So, Tamra, do you have additional advice that you would give to parents and caregivers to help them through this time? Because I know my emotions change on a hourly basis, and I'm certain that with many parents experiencing not only the fear of coronavirus and the COVID-19 illness, but many people are afraid of their livelihoods right now, and wondering what this is going to mean to their financial stability. What other advice could you give parents to cope during this difficult time?
Well, I'm saying this once again, connection is the foundation to everything now. That's what's going to help us survive. And so, and that can be connecting with your co-parenting team partner. It could be family members. It can be friends, however it may be. And I would be careful of picking the people that actually makes you feel, that can actually build you up, then brings you down. Because we all know there's some people that it just may not be working so well. And the reality is, we are all coming into this world as imperfect human beings with our own imperfect past. It is what it is. And so it's important to also reach out to the community. That's what's so amazing about what you've been doing, Beth. It's bringing the community together, and that there's resources out there. And I just don't want anyone to suffer by themselves, because this is tough enough. But dealing with this on your own is it's just too much, and it's not good for it, and it's not a good model for your child. So there's nothing wrong. Like, I think sometimes in our society, we're all about being independent and being strong. And a person who is strong is knowing when they need to be independent and when they need help. And that's okay. There's no weakness for reaching for help. And so I just make sure parents and kids know that you don't have to have it all together. And knowing that, it'll make it a lot easier.
So you've mentioned there are places to reach out to. So Marina, if parents are feeling like they're losing it and they need help, and that maybe they can't think of a friend to call, what are the resources that are available, or where can they go to find resources that are available?
Yes, absolutely. The great thing about our community is we have really wonderful services. So there's certainly not a lack of that. I know we're going to be posting, I believe we'll be posting a link also to the services available in our community, but there's the mobile response team. So if parents are really, really struggling with their child and it's a crisis situation, that program's through JFCS. They can go out there immediately and they're providing support, I guess, remotely right now, like everybody else, but they are there immediately to support. Of course, the Florida Center for Early Childhood, we're there to support families and young children. JFCS, we have Coastal Behavioral Health Care, Healing Transitions, Centerstone, 40 Carrots, many, many, many wonderful organizations that are there in our community. There is no reason, like Tamra said, for people to feel alone during this time, because there are resources out there. And I think, as we've said, and just to reiterate, having a support system right now is really one of the most important things we can do, is to connect and find support, because this is not easy for any of us.
That's great. Now, all of those places that you listed for people who are on the webinar right now, if you look at your control panel, there is a line on it that says handouts. And it lists two handouts in there. One is a chart that 80% of the people who are afflicted with COVID-19 have relatively mild illness. But the other is a list of all of the places that Marina just mentioned. So we hope that you'll take the opportunity to look at that handout and perhaps even download it. If you can't figure out what I'm talking about, we also are going to have those resources posted on our website, Suncoast Campaign for Grade Level Reading, as well as the Florida Center. So,
but can I just add one more thing with the resources? That don't worry about insurance either, because like you're saying, there's some people that might be losing their jobs right now. Don't worry about that too. There's organizations that will be there to support them as well. I just don't want anyone to think that there's going to be any reason why they couldn't get connected.
That's a very good point. Very good point. So we will have the resources listed on our website, grade level reading suncoast.net or the Florida Center for Early Childhood. And I can't believe it, but our time together went really quickly. We've come to an end. I want to thank you both for your willingness, for your caring, for your connection. I think the services that you provide are really invaluable for helping to guide parents through this difficult time. And I'm grateful. I'm speaking for everyone on the webinar. I'm sure they are grateful as well. Okay, everybody, be nice to each other. Remember to wash your hands, wash all of your services. Visit our websites if you would like additional information. We will be connecting with you frequently over the next several weeks. Thank you for being with us today. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.